Welcome to Art with Ian. This is episode 4 of the real-time painting process series that we've been working on. And we're still working on Link, of course. So let's just look quickly at what we did last episode. We took this flat color and we started to work on the render for Link, as well as we also did the background, the very quick background. We're going to work more on the background in a later episode. After we finish rendering up Link, or get close to finishing up rendering Link, we're going to work on bringing the background up to a decent standard. So let's just continue on where we left off, which is we're slowly building up to a detailed render, so to a nice render on him, and we're going to be pushing this to a fairly realistic level of render. So it's, that's a timely process, so we just take our time and we don't rush it, and we just build up as we go. So last episode I started on the tunic, and I think I'll just do that again this time. And I'm going to kind of just go with the flow. If I see things that I want to change or work on, I'm just going to kind of address those as I go. So you might see me bouncing around a bit. Hopefully that doesn't become too hard to follow. Try and talk about some of the changes I want to make. So like this right here, for example, I noticed that fold, that lip, felt too tight to me. Like his clothing was, I wanted a nice sense of really something built up here, and even pushing a little bit over his belt strap there, just a little bit, like so. And I've said it before in previous episodes of this series that nothing is permanent until we're done, right? And that's the way I like to work, and you can work however you want, of course, but I suggest that you try to maintain a certain mindset that doesn't stop you, doesn't hinder you in pushing things maybe a little beyond what you initially thought was correct into a little bit more of, a more thoughtful place, potentially. I like to sit and look at my paintings between working on them and just kind of contemplate what I've been doing, because when you're working, a lot of times you get stuck in a certain headspace of just you kind of zone out a little bit, or at least I do, and just kind of work, and you're thinking about things, of course, but it's a little different than analyzing a painting when you're not working on it. So I think it's good to do both. Just putting a little thickness on this collar, the material thickness of the actual collar. I was looking here, and I think I want this tunic to actually come up higher, like about to here. So I'm just gonna paint that in quickly, and pretty soon, not too soon, but pretty soon, we're going to get rid of all of our line work entirely, and so then we won't have these annoying lines kind of in the way as they are right now. I'm just going to push this into light here. Oh, I should mention, in case you're new to this series, on this episode, we're not working with multiply or overlay layers on the render for this. Everything is just being rendered in real, with just real color in per the color that's required. So like when I change to put shadows on something brown, I actually have to go grab a brown. And when I, go into green, I need to actually grab a green. Whereas when you're using a multiply layer, it just adds that it multiplies whatever color over the top of everything, and you can kind of work that way. It's a nice way to work, but lately I've been doing a little bit more of a traditional style, where I try to use less layer modes and try to paint more literally just traditionally. Okay, we talked in the last episode about whether or not I was going to push more actual foldage into his shirt sleeve, and it seems like his shirt sleeves are actually pretty baggy in several of the references I have, so I think I'm going to just at least a little bit start to do a little bit more of that, which means we need to get more indication going at the edge of the sleeve of that kind of a thing happening. I'm going to paint, actually use a lighter color to paint a hint of the thickness of the sleeve right there. Probably not on this episode, but at some point I'm going to start painting with more texture where there's fabric. So we're actually going to be rendering the textures of like his tunic has a certain type of fabric. His undershirt, I want to have a certain type of fabric, and we're actually going to render use texture to start to sell those things at a point. I don't think that'll be this episode, but we'll see how far we get. I'm doing the setup for these, or the way I'm working for this series is very, very casual. It's just basically I just do 1 hour of work, and however much I got done in that hour is what we got done for that episode, and then we move on to the next one. So in the past I've tried to work more like, this episode's about color, this episode's about texture, this episode's about whatever, and that's a cool way to do it too, but I thought I'd try something different this time around. Okay, let's work on his face a little bit here. I'm going to go quite a bit more saturated and a little bit into the orange. And we're going to continue to deepen shadows on his face. I actually think there's, to some degree, I might chop a little bit of his features up and move things around a little bit. I think I want to bring his mouth up. It's too low. Also, his ears, as much as I agree with my decision to have them kind of down because of his head tipped back, they're feeling a little floppy to me, so I'm probably gonna deal with that too, because that's just not really a look that I'm going for. That's the nice thing about Photoshop, as I've said in past episodes, that you don't have to stress these things. You just work you just keep working your piece until you get where you want to be with it, and take your time. I think maybe just a little bit of, bring those folds in his brow just out a little bit from the center and have them actually over the brow as well. Getting in here where this is where the hair is actually casting a shadow on his face a little bit. Oh, I should probably remind, in case you forgot, or in case you're joining for this episode as your first episode, the light is coming down over my shoulder as I'm looking at the piece, down at link and a bit from an angle. So that's what lighting setup we're using here, which you probably can tell just by looking at where the shadows are, but it's good to mention these things. And as we go, eventually I'm also going to show his wounds. Like, he's probably going to have a bloody lip and like some scratches and stuff, but that's all like late in the game type of detail that doesn't make a ton of sense to start rendering that stuff in unless you feel like you need to set a certain mood for yourself. It doesn't make that much sense to get those kinds of details into a piece until later in the game, because they just kind of get in the way. At least in my experience, you just end up having to repaint them because they get painted over as you work. Okay, now I'm thinking about the planes of the face. As I mentioned before, the plane right here turns at the temple, and the face there's a plane going this way and a plane going this way. And so, based on our lighting setup, we know that this side of his face here is fairly in shadow. I think I'm probably going to end up putting some, like going into like zooming in and doing like some skin texture level detail a little bit, some freckles, things like that. Eventually. As per the usual, the hands have been fairly neglected. Eventually I will get in there and actually paint indications of his nails and things that I haven't done as of yet. But that'll be like late, near the end of the painting probably. I did forget to put his fingerless gloves on him, so let's just sort that out right now. Okay. So this bit on the back of his hand has some depth to it, has some width to it. So let's just indicate that with some light, just like this. And then let's indicate maybe there's another little thing catching some light back there. And we might end up using ambient light in some of these areas to reestablish certain things that get a little bit into shadow. It just depends on how we want to present it. Do we want things to be lost, some lost edges, or do we actually want to show the viewer those things? Okay, let's go a little darker, deeper now. Probably pretty soon it'll be a good idea for me to start painting some of the light as well. But as of right now, still just working in the shadows. Okay. Let's go over here and look at this hand. I haven't even touched this hand, except for putting a little bit of warmth on the fingers. So this finger here is actually under the light. The light is coming down right there. And these knuckles here are turning down away from the light a little bit, so let's indicate that, this knuckle here. This is the side of his finger. Looks like I actually never really even painted his finger right here. So let's do that really quickly. And it might just about be time to get rid of our lines and merge things down and start working that way, because I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed of the line work being in my way. I don't think it's really so much guiding me now as it is just kind of in my way. So that's usually about when I decide that it's time for it to go. It's no longer doing its job. I have the things established I want to have established. So I'm probably going to do that here in a moment. I do need to actually look up his, like, some images of his gear. Like his arm, what he's wearing on his arms, like properly look it up and get some of that detail happening properly. But I will avoid that for now. I'm just gonna indicate that something is happening under here. A little bounce light is showing us a little something. Maybe a little bounce light's getting up into that part of his palm where it's bent out, like right here. Subtle, but still doing a job. And then this hand is kind of casting some shadow over, or the fingers here, I should say. Okay, the edge of his strap here has thickness, and we can either have it as a shadow, or we could have it as light, just is catching the side, but I think it's probably better to have it as a shadow. It's probably a little more viable, I think. Okay, let's see what happens if we turn the sketch off. Do we need it? I do need it for the sword. Because I've kind of been saving the sword for its own thing. So let's see here. Do I leave it on for now? Maybe I'll leave it on for now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mask and these two layers that I've been working on, or actually all of everything, and merge it all, I think. Well, maybe I should work on the sword separately first for a little bit. I don't know. Decisions. I think I'm just going to merge it. So if you click on a layer and then hold down shift and click on the layer at the bottom of the stack, desired stack, you can select them all, and Control E will merge. So now I'm just working on a layer by itself, which means these edges, this kind of stuff, I can actually clean up. I'm not really sure what this line was here in the sketch, but apparently I decided I wasn't going to use it. Make that go away. Here, do a little bit of that. I think for the most part I'm going to be painting to the edge, not erasing away to the edge. But just checking some stuff. I think this here is a little bit too much. I mean, I want to show that the pack is pushing on it, but I think it got away from me. So I'm going to just deal with that. Okay. All right, let's call that for now. The bottle is its own issue. We'll deal with that later. Okay, back to painting. So now we're all on one layer. Everything I'm doing is just on the same layer. Just want to get show that that his undershirt is actually getting all the way into where that fold is. Okay, let's sell this downturn here. And where there's a downturn, there's an upturn. So we need just a little bit brighter. Right through here. Let's sell our reflected light coming up into that shadow. And right through here, I think I want to have a bit of shadow and some folds. But I'm not sure if I've gone too far there. I think eventually I'm going to sell some stitching, just a little bit, like that kind of a thing. But for now, let's just call that good. Let's put a little bit. Let's put a little bit of shadow right here, and then wrap it with a little bit of light. Okay. I think it's time to start just painting a little bit of light into this and just make sure that we are starting to balance that out. But before I do that, I think I'm going to make a few adjustments to some of the features. Like I mentioned, like I'm not crazy about this ear being floppy. It's too much. This one's a little better. It's just supposed to look a little bit downturned because of the angle of his head. It's not supposed to like legitimately look like it's flopping. He's not Dobby. Okay. Let's see here. I think I'm going to raise his mouth up a little bit towards his nose. And I'm trying to decide if I want to do that via liquify or just with the lasso tool and just make a duplicate and move it around. Let's go ahead and start with just making a duplicate and moving it. So I'm just kind of grabbing a section. This doesn't have to be, it just has to be around the area you want to move. We can feather the edges. So Control J to make a duplicate, and then Control T to bring up our transform. And I'm going to stay a little bit zoomed out for this just so I can see better what's going on, but I'm using the arrow key, and I'm just moving that mouth up ever so slightly. And let's turn that off and see what we did. I think I'm gonna go make his mouth slightly more narrow. So I'm holding down Shift as I push inward. Okay. I think I like that. So we're going to call that good. And I'm going to merge that down. Control E. Okay, so let's paint a little bit of light here. I'm picking my normal face tone, and I'm just going to go a little bit less saturated and a little bit brighter. And I'm going to start painting in where I think the light's hitting. Right here on the top of the bridge of his nose, at the end of his nose, nostril. This bone right here, the cartilage, let's get some light on that. Where the eyelid, the under eyelid is tucked in, might be some light. I don't know, that might not be selling very well, but we'll deal with that as we go. We'll see. Let me erase my sketch really quick from this one spot because it's just all up in my way. Okay. So remember we talked about the mouth being a bit of a muzzle around the teeth. That being the case, let's get this area right here coming from the nostril out to here. Let's indicate that that's actually turning towards the light some. And the chin. Top of the ear. Remember we said we'd put light on that there. So let's do that. And I'm going to go ahead and actually render these lips so that they stop looking like a blob. Palette mixing right off the canvas as I have been. You want to have the top lip, typically you want to have that top lip darker because it's turned in down towards the teeth, and then the bottom lip is actually going to catch a little bit of light. Also, the bottom lip tends to not quite be as saturated of color. It kind of just fades away into this part of the mouth here. So we're thinking about anatomy. I'm going to go a little more saturated with this upper lip. Okay, going much darker now. Right here, we want to just indicate where the mouth kind of has a crease and can open right there. That little bit of there's almost like a bit of a two pillows. Think of it like two pillows. Get fairly dark in the corners of his mouth. And while we have this nice dark color, let's get in here and continue to work on the depth of these eye sockets. And we can maybe also indicate a little more depth here in the ear. Especially this one over here should be in shadow. And it's probably time to paint his nostrils. So let's do that. I think that's about wide enough. He doesn't have a super wide nose. Again, my line sketch is very much in my way. I'll just turn it off right now. I guess I'll turn it back on when I work on the sword. Okay. That definitely helps to see what needs to be tied down and what is starting to feel more fleshed out. This eye needs more shape. The eye is a ball, right? So we know how to render spheres. So we just think of that as half a sphere. And it's probably not going to be this episode that I actually go into like the last levels of detail on his face, but I do think it's probably a good idea to kind of take our time here for a little while before we move on and just kind of make sure that we're getting somewhere with it. Okay, this here, this right on the outside of your mouth tends to kind of be part of that muzzled area. So let's make sure we indicate that shape there around his mouth. This appears catching light, both sides. He's not smiling, but the cheekbone is fairly prominent on the face, even if you're young and don't have, your features aren't fully like developed and prominent, or as prominent as they will be. They're still going to catch plenty of light. Let's make sure we keep our warmth in here as we work in the cheeks. Okay, let's see here. I think I want to establish a line under the lip. Like a little bit like that. And then go back into shadow. Okay. Now let's see. With our lighting setup, I think maybe we can do, I don't know. Let's warm this up. There we go. I think I want to show that his chin is coming a bit more to a point, and so that means that this form here needs to be turning off away from the light in our lighting setup. So I'm just going to push like that into shadow and maybe ease off his jaw just a little bit. This line here probably at some point is going to change. In fact, let's just kind of do something with it right now while our line art is out of our way. Something like that's probably pretty good. That feels decent. He's got a fairly feminine face, but he's also quite masculine, and that is never an easy thing to achieve. You have to be really careful that you don't push too far in either direction. Otherwise, you start to lose that feeling. Like, we don't want this to look like a super grown man, and we also don't want it to look like a little boy. We want it to look like a teenager who's still got a little bit of growing up to do, but is still fairly manly in the jaw. Specifically talking about his facial features here, like his jawline. Okay. So I think I want to make some choices about his collar here. I don't know if we should really move on from his face just yet, but let me just do something with that really quick. And notice how I'm being quite subtle and easy with the edges. That's helping to keep him feeling quite soft, even though there's still some strong angles going on. Yeah, let's go ahead and get darker and richer with our color. That's more saturation. Let's just quickly establish something like where I really want that line to be at this point. I can kind of see better with the lines turned off. Okay, something like that. There are going to be these little points where it actually gets quite dark. We're not going to do too many of them, but there will be a few throughout the piece. Let's just do a little bit here, but I don't know. There's a lot of light that can be bounced around, so it's fine. You can establish some really quite deep shadows, and then you can paint your bounce light into them later if you decide to, but it can be nice to at least look and see how far you want to take things. Just make choices by experimenting, not just by assuming, right? Just kind of trying things out. I had a shadow here from his hair, but I'm not sure, honestly, if his hair, because the light's coming at him, I'm not sure if it's from the side enough for that shadow to really be merited. So kind of back and forth playing with that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna move on from the face for a bit. Just put a tiny little bit of rim light right there and show. The tendon. Put a little bit of this form here at the edge of his neck is turning away, so we'll just turn that form with value like we've talked about in the past. Deeper value turns form. Well, value turns form. Your light value turns form just as much as dark value. It just depends on which direction you're going. Okay, let's look at this color now. So I was thinking about this, and I think technically there's this here is actually kind of sticking out this way from his body, which really kind of demands that it goes into shadow a little bit more, and then this part here is pushing up, so the plane changes, and so this would get light. So what I think I'm going to do with these is, well, first of all, I'm going to just paint like a deep shadow color of his flesh tone down in there, because we're going to cover that over with lace. And then we'll come up out of the shadow there. So what I think I'm going to do here is take this darker color and maybe even go a little darker. And with that, you remember we have a little bit of color in our gray, and the color is based off the environment. So I'm going to try this just to paint a little bit of shadow on this up into the edge where it's the rim of it, right, catching light. We do need this to wrap around him, so let's show that. Okay, so this side is a little bit in shadow, like so, all the way until it gets to right around here where it cuts the cut for his collarbone, end of his neck. And then we go into light where it turns right here. I think, and maybe there's like a fold in it where it kind of catches a little bit more light right here. And then this side is a little bit turned away as his body turns around, so we'll just be careful about how much of this we put on this side. That's a little too thick for the material. I want this edge to be a little thinner, because I don't want this material to look like it's super thick. Okay. Let's just be a little careful here that we don't oversell this. I don't want this to look like it's flapping way away from his body, but I want it to also still feel like it's got some distance a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and paint the laces. Back and forth. Yeah, I think that's okay. One more set. Okay, now we're gonna go and get a darker color. This will do. Let's get in here and actually sell the point where the lace tucks into the material. You might notice that I say sell a lot when I talk about rendering, when I talk about what I'm trying to accomplish, and that is exactly what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You're selling something to a viewer that's not real. This is a painting. It's not real, but the more believable things we choose to do with the rendering, the more we can sell to them that they're seeing three-dimensional space existing on a 2D plane. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Let's see, do I want to show that side or the other side? Let's actually start at the top and let's go, okay, this came out here. It overlaps right there. Went in, came around, overlaps right here. Yeah, okay, so we can do like that. Overlaps right here. Overlaps. And also, these laces are going to impact the shirt because they're doing a job. Their job is to cinch this collar area together. And so, in doing that, they're tugging on the material. And when material gets pulled on, it folds. So now it's our job to show how those folds might look. So let's just think about that for a moment here. Let's see if it's cinching here. This is closer to the collar, so is the material going to have as much to bunch up from here? Probably not, but I think it's probably still worth at least trying to put our first fold kind of around this area, just because it'll kind of hopefully look good aesthetically. And then let's see, let's just kind of imagine how the fabric is being tugged on by this, right? And kind of then build our shapes. I don't know how much like people have studied folds. I know that I avoided this kind of stuff a lot as a young artist. But one thing that I've come to realize over the years about folds is that they're a lot of times they're just, if you think about them like geometric shapes, they're a lot easier to wrap your head around than if you try to actually think about like what's actually happening. But if you can actually just find the shapes, it can be actually quite a bit less daunting and stressful to tackle them. They're still, like, no matter what, they're going to be daunting and stressful to tackle. Like, you can't avoid that. But let's see here. I want to go a little bit brighter and just show how this might catch light because of, for the same reason that we have shadow over here. But that might be too bright. I might have gone too bright. We'll see. Just painting, literally just painting shapes. Like trapezoidal type shapes and stuff like that. And just thinking about, okay, this is a plane turned up at the light, this is a plane turned down at the light. That means there's another plane turned up at the light. And then, you know, try and eventually add some nuances to it so that it hopefully doesn't look overly geometric, you know. But as like everything else on this painting, we're going to work on it in phases. So everything gets multiple passes of attention. Okay. Let's look at this edge here on his tunic. Could probably clean that up at this point. I don't really like how perfectly straight this line is right here. So I'm just gonna jut a little bit out and then kind of do something like that, right? Because, you know, folds don't tend to really be all that perfect. In fact, most things, no matter what they are, don't tend to be very perfect. What's our time? We're at 48. We're almost an hour in already. Time really does fly when you're doing this kind of stuff, and I'm sure that you guys all know exactly what I'm talking about. But hopefully this working this way in real time is not boring to, you know, it's not too boring, and hopefully you feel like you're learning stuff from watching the process in this, at this pace, in this way, and just hopefully some of you guys are following along and trying to do your own piece, you know, using the techniques, or just kind of soaking in the concepts, the ideas and whatnot. Hopefully it's useful stuff. I know I've found some art videos in life have been incredibly useful to me. Watching certain guys, some of them on YouTube, some of them from before the YouTube era. I used to watch Bob Ross a lot as a kid. It was like watching a magic trick. It's like, how did that just happen? He's just like waves his brush around like a wand, and then all of a sudden, after half an hour, there's this painting on the canvas, and you're going, what the hell happened? I would suggest not working as zoomed in as I am right now for very long periods at a time. It's really quite dangerous, actually. The only reason I'm staying zoomed in as much as I am is because I kind of want to make sure I get a certain amount of this tunic, these things like in this area, kind of done while we're in here. I don't want to be, because it's actually a recording, I don't want to be too sporadic, because I just don't want the viewers, I don't want you guys to just get completely lost and not able to follow where I'm at. And I think it's probably a little easier. Hopefully it's a little easier like this than it would be if I was zoomed out just all over the place. Eventually we're gonna have to render some gold. I love rendering shiny material. It's definitely one of my favorite things to do, from a rendering perspective, that is. And gonna definitely need to start bringing some texture in too, eventually, which is always a fun, I really enjoy texture quite a bit. It's a fun part of the process when you grab a texture brush. The reason why I work the way I work, where I start by just getting the rendering down with a little less texture involvement, is because then once I get my texture brushes going, I feel like I'm just kind of taking what I already did and repainting it with, it's like I have a really nice roadmap set up that I can go follow with my more textured stuff. And also, you don't actually want texture everywhere. Texture really shows up in areas of transition from shadow to light. If there's too much light, you don't really see that much texture. And if there's too much shadow, you don't really see that much texture. It's right, usually on kind of on the cusp between the two locations, or between shadow and light, that you really see more of it. Okay, let's see here. What do we have going on here? There's some nondescript things happening. I think I want his belt to be going a little farther, and then this is a belt loop in here. Cast some shadow from the fold and just kind of turn this form all the way down into away from the light down here. Okay. Maybe just put a little bit of light right here to show that that is catching the light and coming over the belt. And maybe just a tiny bit of light to show the top of the belt. Okay, more nondescript. This is what happens when you turn line work off. If you work like I do, and you start out with line work, tying things down for you, when you first turn it off, you will find these kinds of issues. Are fairly common, but I don't really mind them. You just paint it out. It's not really a big deal, actually, at all. And we're working quite zoomed in right now as well, so I think it's also worth kind of noting that, like, yes, there's some, it looks pretty messy, some of this stuff, but technically speaking, at the average zoom level that a person will be looking at this, I don't think that it would be altogether an issue. What time do we have? 55. I think I'm going to put some buttons on these. And instead of doing like modern day buttons, I'm going to do like just a ball, like a ball of whatever, wood maybe. Too much shadow down here. Made it look more eased than I wanted, so I took some away. And what I mean by eased is the edge, like more of an eased edge than I wanted. And the way that you can change the speed of a turn of a form is with how gradual the shadow. If you have a nice sharp, see this edge right here? See how that feels like a sharp form turn? If I were to make this really smooth, like this, it would start to feel really round. So that's what I mean. And we want this to feel like it's got a corner on it, but like a soft corner, right? So that's what we're rendering towards. Let's just assume maybe that this has a little flap. So we'll paint a little, like, well, it is a flap, but maybe the edge of the flap just kind of turns up a little bit from being buttoned so many times. So we're just going to get some of the light from up top and put that on like that in order to sell that. And then this button would cast a little shadow and have some light on it. We'll just this indicates that it's a hard surface, the fact that it's got a gleam like that on it. Hard surfaces reflect light quite substantially. Soft surfaces absorb light. So I highly suggest, if you're serious about taking your rendering to a fairly believable place, I highly suggest that you study certain things about the natural world, like how light interacts with different substances. Do some experiments for yourself, like take a light, take different materials, shine it on there, maybe take pictures and then study the pictures so you're not just holding a light the whole time. And then instead of just seeing an image of light impacting an object kind of randomly, you can have the same light with 10 different objects and study the way that light impacted those 10 different objects. And then now you know, with this exact same light, these materials behave this way. And you can start to put that away in your memory banks and pull it out when you're working on your art. Okay, 59. We are at the hour mark, so I think it's going to be time to see where we got to with this. Zoom out, see where we got to, and call this one for today. And come back to it in the next episode. We're making progress. Slow and steady, that's how this works usually. At least for me anyways. I'm not, I don't try to go super fast. I don't think there's any point in that. Just kind of working at a nice pace, enjoying the process. I think it's important to enjoy the process. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you did enjoy it, give it a like. Subscribe to my channel for future videos. Ring the bell to be notified. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.